What if I told you the holiday of love, chocolates, and roses actually began with a bloody pagan festival, one where drunken naked men whipped women with animal hides? Yeah, the real story behind Valentine's Day is way darker and more complex than you might think. It's a tale of ancient rituals, martyred saints, and a strange journey that brought it right here to the UK. So, how did we get from bizarre sacrifices to romantic cards? Well, let's dive in. Long before candlelit dinners and heart-shaped boxes of sweets, the Romans had a festival called Lupercalia. It was held in mid-February from the 13th to the 15th, and it wasn't about one-on-one romance. It was a wild, public ritual for purification and fertility. The name itself probably comes from lupus, the Latin for wolf, honouring the she-wolf who supposedly nursed the founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus. The festival kicked off at a sacred cave, the Lupercal, where priests would sacrifice goats and a dog. Afterwards, things got even weirder. The priests cut strips of hide from the sacrificed goats, called februa, and ran nearly naked around the city, whipping women with his bloody thongs. Now, this sounds brutal, but it wasn't seen as a punishment. It was believed that being struck by the februa would make a woman more fertile and ease the pain of childbirth. It was a chaotic, communal, and deeply pagan ceremony. But here's the twist. While it's often linked to Valentine's Day because it happened in mid February, most historians are skeptical. There's very little direct evidence connecting the two. Lupercalia was about the health of the city and its crops, not romantic matchmaking. That popular myth you might have heard about a lottery where men and women were randomly paired off, it has no real historical basis. So, if Lupercalia isn't the direct ancestor of our Valentine's Day, where did all the romance come from? For that, we need to turn to the church. The story of Valentine's Day is a bit of a mystery, and that mystery starts with the man himself. The problem is, there wasn't just one Saint Valentine. The Catholic Church recognizes at least three different saints named Valentine or Valentinus, and all of them were martyred. In fact, the history was so jumbled that the Church removed Saint Valentine from the general Roman calendar back in 1969. But it's the legends that really matter here. The most famous one tells of a priest named Valentine in 3rd century Rome under Emperor Claudius II. Claudius, sometimes called Claudius the Cruel, was having a tough time recruiting soldiers. He had a theory that single men made better soldiers because they weren't distracted by wives and families, so he outlawed marriage for all young men. Valentine thought this was a huge injustice and defied the emperor, secretly performing marriages for young lovers. Of course, when his secret ceremonies were discovered, Claudius had him arrested and sentenced to death. Another legend, which might be about the same guy or a different Valentine, says he was jailed for helping Christians escape Roman prisons. This version gives us one of the most famous parts of the Valentine's myth. While in prison, he supposedly befriended his jailer's blind daughter. The story goes that he miraculously healed her sight, and on the day of his execution, he wrote her one last letter, signing it "From your Valentine." How much of this is historically accurate is a huge question, but what these stories did was paint a picture of Valentine as a heroic, sympathetic, and deeply romantic figure. Then, around the year 496 AD, Pope Gelasius I declared 14th of February as a feast day for St Valentine. Some historians think this was a strategic move to Christianize the pagan festival of Lupercalia, which the Pope had banned, but that direct link to romance still wasn't quite there. For that, we have to jump forward in time and head to medieval England. For hundreds of years, St Valentine's Day was just another saint's feast day. The big shift towards love and romance can be pinned on one person, the father of English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer. Around 1382, Chaucer wrote a poem called Parliament of Fowls. In it, he describes a dream where all the birds gather before the goddess Nature on one specific day to choose their mates for the year. And the day he named was St. Valentine's Day. The famous line goes, "For this was on St. Valentine's Day, when every bird comes here to choose his mate." This is believed to be the very first time anywhere in writing that St Valentine's Day was clearly linked to romantic love. Suddenly, it wasn't about a martyred saint, it was about birds finding their partners. Chaucer was likely inspired by the old folk belief that mid-February was when many bird species started their mating season. Chaucer was a literary superstar, and his ideas spread like wildfire through the noble court of Europe. The whole concept of courtly love, a very chivalrous and idealised kind of romance, was already trendy among the rich, and Chaucer's poem gave that trend a date on the calendar. Just like that, Valentine's Day became a day for nobles to write poems and make grand romantic gestures. The idea of Valentine's Day as a day for lovers had officially landed in Great Britain. The seeds Chaucer planted just kept growing, transforming from a courtly fad into a real tradition. In fact, the first ever known Valentine's message was sent in the UK, though under pretty grim circumstances. In 1415, a French nobleman, Charles, the Duke of Orleans, was captured at the Battle of Agincourt and locked away in the Tower of London. From his prison cell, he wrote a poem to his wife, which is now the oldest surviving Valentine. By the 17th century, exchanging handwritten love notes on the 14th of February was pretty common across Britain, not just for the nobles, but the tradition really exploded thanks to the Industrial Revolution. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, commercially printed valentines started popping up in the UK. As printing got better and more people learned to read, sending a card became cheap and easy for everyone. And these weren't just simple notes, they were often beautiful, elaborate creations with lace, ribbons, and flowers. Some even had pressed in flowers or intricate paper cutouts. This card sending craze happened in Great Britain long before it ever took off in America. By the Victorian era, Valentine's Day was a massive national tradition. When the penny post was introduced in 1840, it became even easier to send these anonymous, affectionate greetings. Today, it's estimated that tens of millions of Valentine's cards are sent each year in the UK. So, how did this long, strange trip through history shape the way we celebrate in the UK now? Well, a lot of our modern traditions are a direct result of these historical steps. Exchanging cards is still the biggest part of the day, a custom that's been popular in Britain since the 17th century. And while a handwritten note is still special, the shops are full of everything from super romantic to bitingly funny cards. That tradition of sending them anonymously from a secret admirer is a fun hangover from the Victorian era. Gifts like flowers and chocolates are, of course, essential. The red rose became a popular gift back in the 17th century, inspired by the French court traditions. And romantic dinners are really just our modern take on celebrating that special connection Chaucer first wrote about all those centuries ago. But the holiday keeps changing. In the last few years, we've seen a move toward more inclusive ways to celebrate. Galentine's Day is for celebrating female friendships, and Palentine's Day extends that love to all friends, proving that the day isn't just for couples anymore. There's also a growing trend for experiential gifts, things like weekend trips, spa days, or cooking classes, shifting the focus from stuff to shared memories. So, there you have it, from a chaotic fertility festival in ancient Rome to a martyred saint's secret weddings, from a medieval poet watching birds to the mass production of paper cards. The history of Valentine's Day is a tangled, fascinating web. It's a holiday that's been rebranded, remixed, and reinvented over and over again. It shows how our modern traditions are built on layers of history with origins far stranger than we could ever guess. What began with a bloody whip of a goatskin thong in Rome has, after a long and winding journey through British history, become the day of hearts, roses, and romance we know today. So, what are your Valentine's Day traditions? Do you celebrate it, or do you think it's all just commercial hype? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoy this trip through time, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories behind the traditions we take for granted. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.